Teresa Keast studied the ancient wisdom teachings through the School of Practical Philosophy, Vedic scriptures, and Buddhist teachings in New Zealand and Australia before coming to Theosophy through the UK Theosophical Society and Lucid Trust over 15 years ago. She is a regular speaker nationally, a writer, a yoga and meditation teacher, a therapist and single mum of 4 with a heartfelt desire to bring these teachings alive through the practical application in living and understanding a spiritual life of service. Her talk today is called Anger Healed from Within Outwards. We welcome Teresa to give the Blavatsky lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Theosophy is who Theosophy does. Not thinks, not studies, not feels, but does. The universe is worked and guided from within outwards. H.P. Blavatsky. In this talk today, I want to give an esoteric, psychological, and practical exploration of our role in healing a world full of conflict by healing our own anger. My aim in writing this talk is to bring the wonderful teachings of Madame Blavatsky alive in a context of our modern day world. And what better topic to tackle than anger and its association with conflict in the human experience. How we live our life, and especially how we interact with others, is a direct expression of our soul contact, our spiritual development, and our understanding and application of theosophical and ancient wisdom teachings. If we want to change the world and reduce the conflict we see and experience in the world, we need to begin by changing our inner world, the world of our mind. We can search the globe looking for and working towards lasting peace, but we won't find it until we come to realize that peace comes from within and radiates out into the manifest world as an expression of love. Inner peace creates outer peace, as the ancient Hermetic axiom teaches us, as above, so below. This is how the universe is worked and guided from within outwards. And we learn what it means to practically live our theosophical understanding. The voice of the silent, the mind, is the slayer of the real. Let the disciples slay the slayer. Anger lies at the root of all human conflict, from that experience within our own mind, to relationship and family disharmony, to global wars. It is a powerful fire energy, often called the passion of fools. Socrates defined it as the raging and seething of the soul. Aristotle called it the boiling of the blood around the heart. Plato suggested that pain, fear, and anger are given to man as a necessity. His quote, "If they conquered these, they would live righteously, and if they were conquered by them, unrighteously." Blavatsky summed it up beautifully when she said, "Let a man overcome anger by love, evil by good, greediness by liberality, lie by truth." Our human kingdom is governed by the fourth ray of harmony through conflict. And so when we learn to master anger and resolve conflict, we are able to return to a state of harmony on ever higher levels of the spiral. This is one of the principal lessons to be gleaned both individually and collectively from our experience in matter in this school for souls we call our planet Earth. Ultimately, all anger is energy that is emotionally generated. but needs lifting from our solar plexus chakra of attachment to our particular perspective, to the heart, where we can open to a change in our perspective and view a situation with compassion, acceptance, eventually forgiveness, and return to an open-hearted state of unconditional love. We shift from a personality perspective to soul understanding. In truth, anger is part of the human condition to teach us about love. In this talk, I will endeavor to explain how, by consciously recognizing and transmuting anger to love, rather than denying it and suppressing it, we can apply our understanding of theosophical principles. And this practice will lead to the redemption of that within us that needs insight, healing, and transforming. Thus, healing, transforming, and reducing the conflict in our world. When we have the courage to face that which triggers our anger head on, the resultant expansion of our self-awareness individually contributes to the evolution of consciousness collectively through our universal connection. Every single time you change the way you respond to anger, you help to heal the conflict in the world. When enough of us learn to do this, we will experience peace, harmony, and right relations as a human family. It begins with each of us lifting our vibrational energy to master anger. And the benefits of this shift within us radiates outwards to affect every living being we come into contact with. Like endless ripples in a pond, as we vibrate in rhythmic union with our soul, so we touch the soul in others. Anger is always a sign that something deep in our unconscious mind has been triggered and needs healing through further insight. When viewed as valuable information, we can actively engage with our response and the response of others with self-awareness, gaining insight that enables us to let go of our attachments and ultimately heal our anger response. We learn to interact with the world as a soul, rather than from our ego-centered personality. And through this process of transmuting anger, eventually nothing in the world will evoke our anger. Only our compassion, our understanding, and our love. We come to realize that nothing is worth sacrificing our inner peace and connection to love. This frees our energy to enable us to give even greater service to mankind. We shine the light of consciousness on that which is unredeemed within us until we can live as a soul-infused personality in service to others. Carl Jung said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." In our society, we are often taught that anger is wrong, shameful, or not spiritual because of its potential destructive nature. We are not taught how to manage its fire energy, and so we learn to deny it, damp it down, and suppress it. If we experience the negative consequences of anger as a child, we come to fear its expression and even fear the potential intensity of our own anger and the harm it may do. Sometimes we don't even realize we are angry until it overwhelms us, as its root cause can be in other emotions such as sadness or grief. Anger expressed unconsciously is harmful. And this is especially so when the individual is polarized in their personality vehicle, their astral desire nature, and the chakras below the diaphragm, and there is little self-control or self-awareness. Its energy has the power to induce violence, destroy our health, peace of mind, and our relations with those we care the most about. It is one of the many manifestations of fear that we need to redeem. So many people don't realize that fear can express itself in many ways, as rejection, insecurity, disappointment, overwhelm, sadness, grief, shame, jealousy, doubt, worry, anxiety, and anger. For many people, anger is the default expression, as they would rather feel angry than feel shame or sadness, for example. However, when angry energy arises, it has to go somewhere. And we often don't realize that if this energy is not expressed, then it gets trapped in the subtle energy system of the etheric body, usually around the solar plexus, Manipura chakra. In time, this energy builds till it causes a blockage in the natural flow of subtle energy in the body and creates physical dis-ease, especially in the liver, the stomach, the pancreas, the gut, to the gallbladder, negatively affecting the liver and the gallbladder meridians. It affects metabolism and energy production, weight gain around the center of the body, and contributes to diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Emotionally, over time, this leads to depression, as the congested energy blocks the will energy that naturally emanates from the Manipura chakra. Esoterically, depression can be viewed as a buildup of unexpressed anger and a need to resolve the issues that stand behind this anger. So to gain a better understanding of how to safely and constructively express this angry energy and use its power for personality integration and soul growth, we need to know why we react like we do when we experience anger. So if we have a look at this diagram, when life triggers our fear response, this activates the amygdala center and the limbic or emotional center of our brain. These are both part of the original animal survival part of our nervous system, deep in the brain. The amygdala activation stimulates our sympathetic nervous system and subsequently the fight, flight, or freeze stress response. And this activates our body in ways that we need to act for our survival. Our heart rate and blood pressure increase, and blood is pumped to our muscles ready for action. Emotionally, we react with responses that reside in our unconscious mind, that were programmed early in life when we were learning how to survive in our home situation. None of this process is conscious. If, however, we wait 10 seconds, the information that we have perceived from the fear situation will move from the amygdala to reach our frontal cortex. Yeah. The intelligent, conscious, reasoning part of our brain found above the eyes behind our forehead. This is the more advanced, self-aware aspect of our nervous system, where we can process the information and determine a conscious, less reactive response. Through awareness of this process, we can break the habit of allowing our amygdala to hijack our brain and take back control of our behavior with a proactive, conscious response. For example, choosing to count to 10 and breathe slowly and deeply will allow you to calm your mind and body, while also giving yourself time to consider the situation before you respond. When you breathe deeply, you consciously activate your vagus nerve, and this calms your nervous system and avoids the stress response in your body, and the subsequent production of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, because these three hormones interfere with the higher functioning center of your brain and therefore restrict its capacity to act as a receiving center for the higher self. I'll read that again, because that's really important. So the stress response and the subsequent production of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol that interfere with the higher functioning centers of your brain and therefore restrict its capacity to act as a receiving center for your higher self. We recognize that by breathing deeply and slowly, we can create space between our raging and racing thoughts. And by focusing on the breath till our peace and equilibrium are restored, we can detach from these thoughts and simply observe them. This is what we train our mind to do when we regularly practice meditation. By simply detaching from the thoughts and recognizing you have viewed this situation through the lens of your own perception and may not be seeing the whole truth, you activate your capacity for discrimination and open to the insights that will arise from your higher self. So it's the stepping back and recognizing the thoughts that are playing out in response to the situation that is important. With practice, this enables flashes of understanding and insight to completely reframe the situation and change our perspective. We may realize, for example, our part in contributing to the conflict. We may recognize that the other person is doing their best, or there has been a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. This enables us to see the situation as a wise soul and take appropriate action. We learn not to take another's words or actions personally, not to make assumptions about their motives or the situation, and to be impeccable with our word in response. So we seek to understand rather than impose our idea of what is right. Sometimes the valuable information we glean is that another's behavior or words are out of alignment with our values. Their actions encourage us to clarify these deeply held values and determine whether they are still true for us. This examination is part of the integration of your personality so that all aspects of our being become congruent. This reflective process we undergo is guided by our soul. We may decide to say something constructive if we have our emotions under control, or we may simply decide that we need to walk away, as we recognize that we are no longer in alignment with their values, ideas, ideals, and beliefs. We develop a capacity to simply let it go, to preserve our own inner calm and alignment, recognizing that the person involved is a personality, perhaps not yet in touch with their own soul's guidance, or they are working through their own misperceptions, or simply wanting to offload their negative energy. Once we have released our own angry energy, we can try to present a different viewpoint, but ultimately we are not responsible for the behavior of another. We're only responsible for our own behavior and our response to them. We cannot change another person, but our calm response may invoke self-reflection for them. We know the heated energy of anger will seldom invite this self-reflection, positive change, or a realignment of deeply held beliefs and ideals. In fact, it tends to destroy, not build, or foster greater cohesion, cooperation, and strong relationships. based on common purpose and values. So we can consciously choose to take some time out and take responsibility for our own angry energy and release it constructively and safely. And we can do this through exercise, through talking to a trusted friend, if need be, punching a pillow, writing from a stream of consciousness. Expression in a spiritual diary will often help us to reach greater understanding. As we move into the age of Aquarius and the need for greater group work and group consciousness, it is ever more important that we comprehend and practice mastery of our spiritual understanding of anger and conflict, because this is what destroys group harmony and purpose. By lifting into our heart's understanding, forgiveness, and compassion, we tap into the all-present energy of the second ray of love wisdom that serves to align us with goodwill or God's will and its expression of love toward our fellow man. I teach a very effective yoga posture called Makrasan, the crocodile. And I've been teaching this for about 17 years, and I have seen it transform people's emotional state. And it enables the gentle release of the powerful energies of anger and naturally opens greater awareness and understanding through stimulating the Ajna chakra. In my experience, this posture is so effective at transmuting strong emotions and trauma that I've written an ebook about it titled The Magic of Makrasan, the yoga posture that will transform your life. And it's a posture that anyone can do. If you can lie on the floor, you can do Makrasan. When we choose to engage with our angry energy and take responsibility for it, this opens us up to seeing the truth of a situation. So in the voice of the silence, Madame Blavatsky says, before the soul can see, the harmony within must be attained and fleshy eyes be rendered blind to an illusion. Once we have released the energies and opened to a new understanding of what is out of alignment, what valuable information our anger has raised, we can return to the situation and discuss it if needed, decide on any actions that are required, fostering greater understanding whilst building trust and respect in our relations with others and with ourselves. Imagine if this was the process we use to resolve major conflicts and wars on our planet. This conscious management and mastery of anger requires a measure of soul contact and taking responsibility for your own behavior with a realization of the effect we have on others. It reflects a willingness to move from our astral emotional desire nature to be right and win a conflict, feeding our ego personality, to the spiritual aspiration to understand, to stand under greater truth, to build relations, harmony, and live in peace with our fellow man. This is to lift up into the light of greater understanding. We have moved from a separative individual consciousness toward unified group consciousness. Again, in the voice of the silence, hast thou attuned thyself to the suffering of humanity, O candidate for light? We are reminded. By understanding that anger serves to give us valuable information, we move towards personality integration and become consciously aware of anger's powerful role in propelling our spiritual development forward by revealing the aspects of our personality that need healing. It serves as a mirror that reveals valuable opportunities for spiritual growth and learning, and acts as a catalyst to the powerful integration and coordination of our lower vehicles to become a more effective channel for the energies of our soul. We come to understand that its fire energy is an energy that enables transformation. That's why it's a fire. And just as an aside, often people will see repeated patterns in a lifetime. The same situation keeps on coming up, the same conflicts, the same problems. And there's a reason for that. Your soul's going, you didn't get it last time, I'm trying again. It's going to attract life situations that show you this is what you need to redeem in this lifetime. This is part of your soul contract for this time round. But often we don't see it. And interestingly, the lessons tend to get tougher and tougher and more direct, and the message loud and clear. This is a beautiful quote. The more thou dost advance, the more thy feet pitfalls will meet. The path that leadeth on is lighted by one fire, the light of daring burning in the heart. The more one dares, the more he shall obtain. The more he fears, the more that light shall pale. These wise words from the voice of the silence remind us that it takes courage to change, to look at our emotional responses. Courage is a wonderful attribute of the Buddhic nature, and it is not an absence of fear, but rather doing what is right despite our fears and doubts. By having the courage to own our angry response and not blame another for making us angry, we are given the opportunity to transmute this lower vibrational energy response of the solar plexus to the higher energies of love in the heart chakra. And this is through the insight and understanding of our higher self, as expressed through our higher mind. We come to view the situation with greater understanding, compassion, acceptance, eventually forgiveness for all parties concerned, including ourselves. And that's the key to healing, the forgiveness of the self in recognition that we are one. This allows us to return to an open-hearted state of love. Through tapping into the goodwill, or the will to good as an inherent quality of our heart chakra, we are able to express love in action. This love is unconditional, as it completely accepts the situation and the other person as they are, and lifts us up into an understanding or a standing under of a greater truth about what happened to evoke our anger. This understanding is only possible when we view the emotional drama from the perspective of the silent observer and our higher mind, and can retain this polarization in our higher self-awareness. So when we observe the drama, and just as an aside, I say to people, imagine you're in the audience watching the drama play out on the stage. When you're in the audience, you are just watching it as a drama playing out for your learning. When you're pulled into the angry response, the lower astral desire, Manipura response, it's like you're up on the stage. You can't see what's going on from a higher perspective or a bigger picture. It's only when you're in the audience that you can observe and truly understand and gain the insights and learn. This is how we slay the slayer and return to what is real. A return to love is a return to our truth and an expression of our true Buddhic nature. Often this is the focus of the spiritual work undertaken after the first and in preparation for the second initiation as we walk our unique soul path. So the mastery of anger is a big one in terms of the second, coming up to the second initiation. To transcend our own habits of anger brings forth the soul qualities of truth, beauty, and goodness to shine out into the world, making a difference to every heart we touch. When enough people in the world are able to live in this way, at this level of consciousness, we will have an end to human conflict and be able to build a world in which we live in peace and harmony. Sorry. Another quote from Blavatsky. Do not be afraid of your difficulties. Do not wish you could be in other circumstances than you are. But when you have made the best of an adversity, it becomes the stepping stone to a splendid opportunity. Let me explore a deeper understanding of anger. If we accept that anger is always a sign that something within us is out of balance, out of harmony, we feel angry when someone's words or behavior are out of alignment with our most deeply held beliefs, values, ideas, and ideals. And this triggers a strong emotional response. We often have a strong attachment to these beliefs, values, ideas, and ideals, and this resides deep in our unconscious mind. They've developed over a lifetime from our cultural, family, religious, and psychological experiences of life. And it's especially from the age of birth to 7 years that these programs are laid down in the unconscious mind. And they define who we are and what we stand for, our identity. This is the basis of the quotation by Aristotle, "Give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man." The more we are attached to these beliefs, the stronger our emotional reaction when they are challenged. Anger arises as an expression of fear, a self-defense mechanism that protects our identity and sense of self. This is especially powerful in the majority of humanity that are centered in their astral desire nature. As we have explored, anger arises from fear. It is ultimately an expression of fear, and the strong feelings evoked are because it touches the deepest fear we have of disconnection from ourself, from those we care about, or a group or an ideology we identify with. Through an in-depth study of A Course in Miracles on the teachings of the Christ consciousness, we come to understand that love pervades our universe. It is our essential nature, and there's nothing it cannot heal. We come to understand that love is connection, and fear is simply an absence of love, a feeling of disconnection from love, from God, from our true self. In love, we experience trust, hope, courage, compassion, and build relations either within ourselves or with others. We feel safe in this connection. Fear is the temporary loss of this feeling of safety and security. And we mistakenly believe that we have been disconnected from our essence, from our life force energy, from life itself. And this is why our response is so acute. Course in Miracles teaches us that love and fear cannot coexist. We are either in love or we are in fear. And that fear is ultimately an illusion of our mind, we must come to understand and redeem. It's simply an absence of love. And we redeem through forgiveness. And in doing so, return to a state of love, the natural state of our soul. To return to love is to return to our soul perspective of the situation or drama that your personality is experiencing in any given moment. This takes many lifetimes to master. And Blavatsky summed it up beautifully when she said, people keep repeating that the main things are love and compassion. Certainly love and compassion are the main things, but it takes knowledge to make love and compassion fruitful. It takes just a second to say love, but to acquire knowledge for the well-being and blessing of humanity requires an eternity. A beautiful illustration of the power of love can be found in watching the film called Mission Joy, or reading The Book of Joy by Douglas Abrams, in which the late Sir Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, two soul-infused characters who share a heartfelt friendship of love, spend a week together unraveling the key to living from a place of joy. Despite their completely different ideologies, these two men both agree that joy is a choice we make from an open heart that seeks to see the commonality between us and transcend the differences through love. They teach us that ultimately joy is a quality of the human heart that cannot be sought, but arises when we help others, and that is only suffering that makes the experience of joy possible. It is wonderful to witness the childlike joy that emanates from these two friends and to experience the love and compassion they share for each other. Both of these men have transformed their anger into love and the capacity for joy through forgiveness. And in doing so, they show us the power of this process. Desmond Tutu mastered his anger despite the atrocities revealed by apartheid and the reconciliation tribunals in South Africa. And the Dalai Lama feels no anger towards the Chinese despite his exile from his country and the treatment of his Tibetan people. So the heart is where our intention arises. And it is only a heart attuned to the good, the true, and the beautiful that has the courage to transcend such powerful anger. Both men spoke of the power of mindfulness and thinking in the heart, the knowledge that Blavatsky mentioned. When we are mindful and in the present moment, we are completely self-aware, centered in our soul. This enables us to observe the emotion of anger as it bubbles up inside of us and to choose to wait to respond. Shift the angry energy if needed, and then have the courage to delve into the insights or information it was presenting for our attention. When mindful and present in this way, we are not operating from the fears and doubts that come from our past, from our unconscious mind. Neither are we projecting these into the future as worries and anxieties. We are simply being conscious and present to the emotion of anger. We let it flow, knowing it has some information that we need to grow and learn spiritually, and recognizing that life is allowing the light of consciousness to shine a torch into our unconscious mind and reveal the change in our understanding or perception that is needed. When we are not mindful and aware, but caught up in our thoughts and the inevitable analysis of our lower mind, then we allow our unconscious mind to determine our response to the situation. And this will often be the default response of our child personality self, defending our ego or our view of ourselves. So the analogy of the stage. When we are mindful, it is like we are sitting in the audience. When we are caught up in the thoughts of our lower mind, we've hopped into the drama on the stage. We can't see the situation with the same perspective, the same truth. And as our thoughts and feelings escalate, our anger builds. The stress response hormones take over our body, and we are engulfed in the flames of anger, and we lose any capacity of our higher mind to discern wisely the truth of the situation. We become reactive with no chance of any proactive, conscious response. But if we pause and detach from the emotions and work through the understanding, we have the potential to heal our emotional triggers for good. When we see them, they are no longer unconscious. We're conscious of them. We change our mind, and this changes our behavior. In time, we redeem all that is unresolved within us, and anger is no longer an emotion that we experience very often, if at all. Instead of anger being our default response to a challenge, compassion becomes our natural way of being and responding. This ability to stand in the light of your higher mind is what Christ taught us when he said, "I am the light of the world." Light is the dawning insight or understanding of greater truths as you transcend the cage of your lower mind and your lower emotional astral desire nature. In John 32:8, then you will know truth, and the truth will set you free. If, however, we choose to deny and push the anger away, our soul will simply engineer situations in life to bring it to our attention time and time again until we have the courage to look at it. Holding on to anger in this way is detrimental to our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health and well-being, as it blocks our life force energy and generates great resentment that harms our relations with others. And remember, anger can be red hot and fiery, explosive and powerful in its expression, but equally it can be cold blue, calculating, and expressed passively. I love this quote. In fact, I actually quoted this to my angry teenage daughter 2 days ago. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You're the one that gets burned. So in conclusion, I hope that this talk is giving you some insight into anger and its role in propelling us along our spiritual path of growth and transformation. I trust that you will be inspired to change the way you see and work with your own anger and see hope for a reduction in the conflict inherent in human relations worldwide as we gain greater soul contact and come to see anger as simply information. Anger is one of those topics that we tend to avoid in theosophical talks and discussions, yet it provides us with the perfect opportunity to apply our knowledge and extract greater wisdom when we do so. A greater understanding of anger healed from within outwards is paramount to resolving conflict and developing right human relations and our conscious evolution as a collective human family. And I want to finish with this beautiful quote. To act and act wisely when the time for action comes, to wait and wait patiently when it is time for repose. Put man in accord with the rising and falling tides of affairs, so that with nature and law at his back and truth and beneficence as his beacon light, he may accomplish wonders. Ignorance of this law results in periods of unreasoning enthusiasm on the one hand and depression on the other. Man thus becomes the victim of the tides when he should be their master. Madam Blavatsky. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Teresa. That was a wonderful talk. And as Teresa says, it's a subject which we tend to ignore and brush under the carpet. Now, there is time for some questions. And I'm sure there will be some questions. So if you have a question, please will you raise your hand?
Hi, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa, for a very inspiring talk. I mean, anger is something which we do need to discuss and everything.
Tim.
Would you say that human beings are learning to control their anger, or are we just getting angrier and angrier and angrier as a species? I think about this a lot, and every time I think about it, I come up with a different conclusion. So I would be interested to know what you actually felt about this. Are you optimistic that human beings are finally able to start controlling these raw emotions that we have?
I am optimistic, Tim. Brilliant question. And the reason I'm optimistic is to heal anything, you have to first see it and be aware of it and it to be out in the open. And I think increasingly we are talking about anger. We are addressing conflict. We're talking about things that even a generation ago we didn't talk about. We're talking about emotions that we wouldn't talk about. And yes, like any wound, it gets worse before it gets better. I believe that we are on the cusp of a change, a major change. And as more people open the centers above the diaphragm, especially open the heart, this opening will draw to the surface those aspects of their nature that need redeeming. And this is what we're seeing individually and worldwide. So it may feel like it's getting worse, but I believe it's actually part of the healing process. And the other thing to be aware of is that it doesn't require the whole of the world to change. It only requires a certain percentage, 1%, and they drag the rest. And you may or may not be aware of the work of, oh, its name's gone out of my head, the book Force versus Power, where they mapped the human emotions. There was a map, basically a logarithmic map of the states of consciousness of mankind. And many studies were done on thousands of people. And the very lowest vibrational state, the lowest emotion that mankind experiences was shame. And apparently we will do anything to avoid shame. We'd rather be guilty than shameful. And as we move up the scale of emotions, we come to things like guilt, jealousy. Anger was actually right at the cusp. They talk about the level of 200. Anger was the transforming cusp where people started to move into the more positive emotions. So this is why I see the fire of Manipura as that phoenix rising from the ashes in the heart, and the anger, it has the power, the fire energy to transform, to transmute. And as people moved up into the higher emotions so that they were able to move into understanding, they were able to move into higher emotions like love, peace, to the highest avatar who's a completely enlightened being. There's this scale. And what the studies showed was that someone vibrating most of the time at levels above the solar plexus, so most of the time they're vibrating in a state of love, connection, working from an open heart, they were able to lift the energies of those who are vibrating below that 200 anger fear level. And it was interesting. I can't remember off the top of my head the figures, but it was something like, oh, I know what it was. 15% of the world, if 15% of the world are vibrating at a level up toward love, they lift the other 85% over that cusp of fear and anger. And this is where we have a responsibility. If you feel like you want to be in that 15%, you have a responsibility for your state of being, because we are all connected, and it affects the state of being of everyone who comes in contact with you. You know, the pranic emanations from your physical body have a vibration, and they affect every living thing, not just people, plants, animals, our planet, every sentient living thing. And so what it was found was one avatar vibrating in pure, enlightened awareness was able to hold the energy for the whole planet and keep it above destruction level, which is probably why we're still here. We've had just enough avatars or people vibrating at a high enough level to have prevented our destruction through conflict thus far. So when someone lifts up, even up to the level of an open heart, they can affect the energies, I think it was of 75 million people. They lift the vibration, the conscious collective vibration. So yes, I am, in answer to your question, I am optimistic, because I can talk about this now. There are times when we wouldn't talk about this, and that to me is the healing.
Hi, Teresa. I was watching Wimbledon this year, and I was watching Kyrgios and Andy Murray,
Yes.
and they both lost their temper. They got angry, and they both lost. But Djokovic goes to a Buddhist temple and he's totally focused. So the latest understanding is that if you've got too much going on in your brain with anger, you don't perform.
No.
You can't enter the so-called zone.
The flow.
The free flow state. And also I thought Andy Murray with maybe unexpressed anger, arthritic hip.
Yes.
So
yes, because anger in the body is often expresses as inflammation.
So I just thought to hear your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, no, I would agree totally, because when a sports person gives that performance that you watch that looks like they're in slow motion and they're just in the flow and it's beautiful, absolutely full of grace, and they're in the flow, really they are acting as a complete open channel for the highest expression of who they are. That is a soul felt physical performance. And so if there's too much, if the athlete is centered in their thinking mind, that's not going to happen. They will not experience that flow and that beautiful physical expression of the divine that we see in sport.
Just to add, they see sport. They see sportsmen possibly as being the new priests because of what you've just described in the free flow aesthetic. Yes,
yes. And really, it's when you give a performance like that, if you've ever been in the flow and experienced that, it's as if you are stepping back from it and allowing it to come through you. So it's not of you, it comes through you. So that performance comes through, and that is that stepping back. So maybe through the Buddhist work he's done, he's learned to detach and step back from all the drama. It's just a drama, it's an illusion, it's going on the stage. Step back and allow your best performance to come through despite what's going on. So that's the courage to do what's right and what's needed despite what's going on. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you for the presentation. One quick question. So you mentioned between trigger and response, focusing on slowing down your response, but there is also mental explanation in between. So would you recommend, and do you see it that changing mental labels of what we think is happening with positive explanations would be even more effective than changing our response right away.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and you can do that, but you're still working with the vehicle of the lower mind. So if when something happens and you recognize your negative response and you recognize you're being sort of triggered by anger, it takes an awful lot of energy to go in there and change all those negative responses. And often as you work with your lower mind, the negative responses will kick back with even more negative responses, almost rationalizations for why your perspective is right. If you're going to operate in the lower mind, you won't change anything. By stepping back, you lift up into the higher mind, which is the only chance to really redeem. I would use the analogy of thinking of your mind like a garden. So see the angry thoughts as the weeds, and the change in perspective, the more positive thoughts that center you in love as the flowers. And really the weeds wither and die through lack of attention. You don't need weed killer. You just don't give them attention. You step back, and yet we give the positive, the change, just being open to change. You don't even have to go in there and reframe it. Just be open. What is this teaching me? What have I got to learn here? Am I seeing this correctly? Just being open is enough, that your higher self will go, yes. And your soul will just infuse you with understandings. You might suddenly pick up an expression on the other person's face, or you might pick up their energy and think, oh my goodness, they are really doing their best. They're not meaning anything personal to me. Or you may realize, you might just say, you may realize that this is something else going on for them, and you're just the recipient of what happened earlier in their day. And so it's just, okay. But really that being the silent witness, the stepping back is the key to reframing it. It will reframe itself with higher truths that your lower mind won't be able to work out and analyze. That comes through from the higher self. Does that make sense?
We have time for one more question. You got it there?
Yeah, and we have one question coming in from our online.
Yeah.
Actually yes. So the question goes as that, I'm not 100% sure that I understand, but maybe you understand it better. I think that maybe it is in such a way that because we practice too little of meditation, I do not know what do you think about it?
Yes. One of the key things would be if more people would practice meditation, because I describe, when I'm teaching meditation to people who are new, I say your mind is like, your thoughts are like wild horses in your mind, incredible power, and they'll take you here, there, everywhere. And you feel at the mercy of those wild horses. You go here, next thing you're here, and oh my goodness, it's exhausting in there. Meditation is simply disciplining those horses so that you have the reins. You step into your true self, your higher self. You now have the reins, still all the power of those horses, but you now direct where they go. And this is the only way you can learn to use your mind to properly think. To use your mind as the instrument, the incredible instrument it is, and the power it has to actually think, not be thought, but to think. And in this way, meditation would transform. If we were to teach children in schools, especially the very young ones, to meditate, to step back, it's that stepping back, that capacity. Every time in meditation that your mind wanders off, and you bring it back to the breath, to the seed thought, to the mantra, to whatever your focus is, you are disciplining the mind. You are taking the reins of those wild horses. And every time that you do that, you are creating a powerful mind that is a disciplined mind. And that disciplined mind can see what's going on when you get angry. It's like you're watching yourself get angry. And you're in the audience, not on the stage. So yes, I would agree totally. If more people, even if it was just 10 minutes a day, do you know what I mean? Just more people would learn to step back from their thoughts in their mind and realize you are not your thoughts. Because if you can observe those thoughts, who's observing them? And you say that to people who are not into meditation at all, and they go, oh, if you can watch your thoughts, who's watching them? And that's the awareness. That's all that's required. So yeah, more meditation, definitely, and teaching it right through. And it can be taught to people who are not particularly inclined towards studying more esoteric subjects. It's becoming more mainstream. Even in the last 10 years, meditation is far more mainstream and acceptable, which is brilliant. And that comes into your question, Tim, where I think it's really one of the big hopes of the world is this, especially the young people, you know, apps on their phone where they can learn to meditate. This is the key. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to, on your behalf, to thank Teresa for an absolute wonderful talk. I think she's given us an awful lot of things to think about. Once again, thank you, Teresa, so very much for giving us your wonderful Blavatsky lecture.
No problem. Thank you.